Thank you. And welcome to this week's NORA Startup webinar and podcast. It might be that you're listening live at this webinar. It might be that you're looking at this webinar some weeks from now. And it might be that you're actually now listening to a podcast. But today we have a very exciting webinar podcast about how Norwegian AI startups grow and prosper. It is the last webinar for 2020, and we will finish with a bang, meaning we will learn and understand how startups in the AI field can grow and prosper. So in this week's webinar, we will meet some modern and engaging Norwegian AI startups. We will meet Homefair, Lexolve, and Mobai, who will present themselves, their activities, and share some struggles along the way of becoming thriving AI startups, achieving funding and growth in the competitive market. We will also learn from StartUpLab how they work as an incubator for Norwegian startups in the field of AI and how they support. The stories are meant to guide the audience on how to succeed in this ambitious AI field. So first we will hear from the webinars and from the participants, and then we'll have a discussion later. So my name is Morten Goodwin, and I'm a host of this webinar. And today we have 4 panelists and a co-host. So we have Walid Mustapha from Homefair. We have Sverre Sundsdal from Lexolve. We have Brage Strand from Mobai, and we have Sondre Pedersen from StartUpLab, each of which will give a short introduction before our plenary discussion. And we also have with us Alex Moltzau. Could you just, Alex, start by giving 1 minute about yourself and your role in this webinar?
So I'm just here to maybe fill in with some stories in the Norwegian AI startups ecosystem. And I'm a representative for NORA because I work there as part-time, but I'm also studying a master's in social data science. So really excited and I look forward to hearing what you have to share.
That's very good. We look forward to hearing from you also, Alex. The key here is for the audience members to learn something from what's happening. And then it is important that you actually provide questions. So everybody who's listening now can provide questions directly to the panelists or to all through the chat. So if you have some questions to some of the panelists, please provide them and we'll make sure that these are asked in the plenary discussion. So with no further ado, I would like to ask the first presenter to talk a bit more about Homefair. So Walid, would you like to start this ball by explaining what Homefair is?
Thank you for the kind introduction, Morten. So I don't know whether we are thriving per se yet. We do have some way to go, but we're definitely getting there. So I could start off with saying a few words about Homefair. Homefair was founded in 2019, and we are a team of 4 people. And today I'll be presenting one of our core services, which is Make-La-Match. And yeah, and also I'll be presenting one of the many challenges we faced as an AI startup and how we're trying to address this. So who am I? Well, my name is Walid, as Morten mentioned. I'm the CTO and one of the founders of Homefair. And as a CTO of a startup, you have to wear many hats. So I do some data science and some data engineering, cloud architecture, DevOps, backend, and API development as well. I graduated in 2018 from NMBU with a PhD in renewable energy. And in practice, it was applied mathematical optimization. And prior to founding Homefair, I worked as a data scientist at Inmates Consulting, where I consulted for Tina. And then I did some independent consulting as an ML engineer for NetLife Dialogue. So that's sort of the background. But yeah, back in December of 2018, I wondered whether it was possible and whether real estate agents actually have an effect on selling price. So the main question was, is the real estate agent market or real estate market perfect? And as an extension of that discussion, would it then be possible to use ML to estimate real estate agent performance? So we created an initial POC, and that showed that there is definitely a difference between the best and the worst real estate agents, and that difference can be well over 200,000 NOK for an average apartment in Oslo. But the question then became, how can home sellers identify great agents from the bad ones when all real estate agents claim to be great, and all of them claim that they can sell for a high market price? So that's why we decided to develop a product to do just that, and that's Make a Match. So for any given home, we use historical transactions, a multitude of data sources, ML as well as AI, to find the individual real estate agents most likely to sell a home for the highest market price. And this solves one of the biggest problems that home sellers have, which is selling a home for a high market price. To our knowledge, we are the first company to compare real estate agents' performance in an objective fashion. And because we live in Norway, we believe this is definitely enabled by availability of nationally sourced high quality data. Yeah. So how does the service work? Well, you visit makeamatch.no, and then you search for your particular address and add an apartment number if needed. I should say that the service is currently available in Oslo, but we will go national sometime in January. So once you fill in your details, you are presented with a value estimate. In this case, the value estimate is 16.3 million NOK. You are presented with some area statistics for your particular area. In this case, it's Frogner, average square meter price and so on. And then you are presented with the expected selling price for all relevant and active agents in your particular postal code. It's presented in tabular form and on an interactive plot, depending on preferences of the users. So then we do a pre-selection of the best 3 agents. So those that can sell for 17.1, 16.7, and 16.7 again. We pre-select those, and then you continue to see which agents we've selected for you. So you fill in your contact details, and then you get a preview of the product you will be ordering. And after you place your order, you get your agent recommendations. I should say that this is completely free for the user. So this is what the product looks like. The estimated selling price is 16.3. You have the names of the 3 real estate agents that we recommend for your particular home, their office, how long they typically spend to sell a home, and the expected selling price with those particular agents. But actually, with this product, we faced a big challenge, and this is the challenge that I wanted to present you with. And it has to do with transparency and explainability of our agent recommendations. So we had a considerable challenge with how we were presenting the product, both to prospective home sellers and to real estate agents. So some prospective home sellers requested more transparency, and a few have even questioned the objectivity of the service, right? And then you have the agent selection that is not immediately explainable to real estate agents either. And some real estate agents, they were asking us, well, why aren't we recommended for a particular home when they think that they're clearly the best to sell that particular home? So this is a big challenge for us, and we are trying to accommodate for that, trying to modify the product to meet those demands. And so this is the new variation on the product that we are working towards implementing. Besides the estimated selling price for a particular agent and time to sell, as was visible in the PDF product, we also specify the number of homes sold in your particular area, as well as the performance. And performance is our key metric, and that represents the proportion of sales where the agent has sold for a higher than expected price. In this case, it's 86%. So our hypothesis is that prospective home sellers will likely have a higher confidence in our service just by seeing this data and better understanding how we do things. Real estate agents, they will likely appreciate the transparency, but they may not necessarily agree with our estimates. That's something we have to discuss later on, yeah? But we will, of course, need user feedback before we implement the modifications, but we do have confidence that this is a good solution. Besides that, we've faced many more challenges as an AI startup in Norway, which I haven't had a chance to shed light on. So I'm looking forward to the other discussions or presentations and looking forward to having a fruitful discussion subsequently. Thank you.
So great, Walid. I will just start with one question for you. And how important do you think it is in your market, transparency and interpretability? Is that crucial to your algorithm, or is it just wish to have?
This is crucial. Initially, we thought it was a nice to have or a wish to have, but it turns out that it is crucial. Our initial estimations show that we can expect a much higher conversion rate simply by approaching it differently and presenting the user with how we actually do the estimation. Yeah, and we'll likely have to reveal some of our under the hood logic that we don't necessarily want to reveal, but I think that's one of the costs we'll have to pay to increase traffic and increase usage.
Yes, great. So that was my understanding as well. Then I assume that interpretability and explainability would also be important for our next speaker, Sverre, in the area of law. If I'm being judged by an algorithm, I want it to be explained, I would expect. So Sverre, could you please talk a bit more about Lexolve?
Well, I don't want to jump directly to explainability, but
Just start with your presentation.
So yeah, so a little bit about myself. So I studied at the NTNU, and I kind of, my first years as a professional was at Google, and I kind of saw this combination of creativity, advanced technology, and speed that was invigorating and thrilling. And I kind of think that this can be done, we can repeat it in Norway. And I've tried in the past, and this is like my second time to do this in Norway. My last job was Babylon Health, where we essentially did 3 impossible things. So a global health service that had daily deploys, which is unheard of in the health industry, and then of course AI with a lot of focus on the interpretability, but I won't go into much on that today. So I'm gonna share my presentation. I cannot compete with the quality of slides because that's not my skill.
Nobody can.
But let's see. Does this work? Yeah. Okay. So our goal is to build an in-house lawyer for SMEs. So small businesses are our primary target. And if you look at kind of what most companies have today, they have an accounting service or an accounting app, and they're kind of trying to kind of drag out some legal help from this service. We believe that this is actually a much more important part of running a business, and you probably need a separate service for that can do more for you. So we don't do strategy, we don't do conflict resolution or anything like complex like that. Most companies have more basic needs, and kind of that's where we're starting. And that's also why we're focusing on small businesses. We started back in 2017. This is before my time. But the whole concept is to build this thing, self-service legal needs. And then we are doing this now with a questionnaire that generates a tailored questionnaire that generates a contract tailored for your needs. We've launched it. We have had about 60,000 contracts created. We have partners like Carlsberg, Werke, Husstein, and so on. And we're now kind of switching to focus on small businesses. If you're a CEO today and you need legal help, you kind of have 3 options. You can Google for it, or you can engage a law firm, or you can try to rearrange your current contracts. That all of these have their own drawbacks. There's high risk, or there's a lot of work, or you just pay a lot. Like, this is not a good experience for anybody. So we kind of want to build an app where you can kind of get some overview, describe what you need, answer some simple questions, and get your advice, and then quickly move on. And so we have today, this is kind of what's live today. So this is what I'm showing you to get an idea of what we're doing. So you have this dashboard that shows you the relevant things about your company. You can do a health check on yourself, answer some high-level questions of what's going on in your company. There's about 20 questions, and from that we kind of give you a score of what is your legal health and a risk profile, and what you should address in a prioritized order. With that comes templates and contracts that support your company. And of course, you can send it for signing when that's needed. So kind of the very basic of what you need to run a company. So this is now gone from a very complex thing to a very simple experience for the end user, which more people can provide. And so most legal services focus on getting like high value interactions and get as much money each time you need to contact a law firm. Our goal is the opposite of that. We want to take a long-term view and offer unlimited interaction and help, but at a very low price point. And this kind of goes hand in hand, because then if we can get a lot of interaction, that helps us train AI that can do more. It also makes it easier for you to remember us next time you need legal assistance. So what we are now working on is a lawyer in the loop system, where you can ask us questions, legal questions, and we can have an AI supported lawyer that will kind of effectively bring you advice. And that's why we can offer it at such a low price. This is currently not launched, but we're currently developing. We can scale, currently like a lawyer can serve around 50-60 clients a year, but our lawyers can help 60 clients a month. So it's a very different picture. We are, as you saw, we have launched our self-service freemium product. We are launching this easy access to lawyer, and we have from that building also a predictive and proactive long-term healthcare and legal health system. We are a firm believer on the automation ladder. So we want to build a product that can go from a manual system that can create suggestions for you and then partially automate, go into a review only, and then fully automate. And so everything that we build is sort of aligned to this vision. And of course, we are mostly working on step 2 now, but we're quickly seeing a path to level 3. We are building this around reinforcement learning, Bayesian machine learning, natural language processing, and knowledge graph. One of the main challenge that I find with this is that finding enough talent that has done sort of Bayesian reinforcement learning. It's a very few people with experience in that in Norway. And of course, there's other problems that we can talk about. But yeah, that was my intro.
So thank you very much, Sverre. So one question that immediately comes to mind is that you were talking about addressing small companies, not big ones. But when we talk about AI, we always talk about the big companies, Facebook, etc. And the reason we talk about them is because they have the big data. Do you see big data in these small companies, or is that not a concern for you at all?
Yeah, I think that that's a distraction when it comes to these systems. There's a lot of advances in data efficient algorithms over the last 5 years that are very interesting. That's one aspect. The other one is that it's not about the volume in each company. It's about having lots of similar cases. And that's why we're going for the low end of the market, where there's a lot of companies that will be happy with a simpler service. So we can provide one advice that we provide will be relevant for more companies. And that's how we get our scale benefit.
That seems very smart. So you learn from each other.
Yeah.
Very good. And I assume, or I'm just thinking that maybe something similar happens in Mobai. We'll see. Brage, would you like to give us an introduction to what you're doing?
All right. Get my screen shared. My name is Mustapha, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mobai.
So Brage, your sound is a little bit off. Could you look at that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm able to fix it on the spot. Can you hear me okay, or good enough?
Not really. So what I suggest that we go to Sondre's presentation first, and maybe you can look at a possibility check, and we'll come back to you, Brage, because your sound is way off. So we'll just ask if Sondre from StartUpLab could give an introduction first, and maybe you can check your microphone while we're working on that, Brage. So Sondre from StartUpLab, you're supposed to help all of them, not on microphone issues, but other things, I think. So maybe you can tell us a bit what StartUpLab is doing. And after your talk, we will then go back to Brage and hopefully with a working microphone.
Yes, thank you, Morten. My name is Sondre Pedersen, and I am the program manager for our industry program within data science at StartUpLab, which we created around 2 years ago together with our industry partners in order to make kind of a network for startups within this field to succeed. So what we do, we basically help the companies connect with research partners, industry experts, talents, and we also have developed some courses, as well as doing what StartUpLab has always done, helping companies getting their first customers. That's why we work with over 20 of Norway's largest corporate partners, and also helping the companies getting their first round of financing. That's kind of the short pitch for what we do. And yeah, in regards to talent, it's fun to see Sverre again. He was also at StartUpLab helping some of our companies when he was in Babylon Health, explaining how he went from, I think you talked about how you guys went from being 200 people to almost 600 in like 6 months. It's this crazy journey within Babylon Health. So I hope we'll dive more into that later on today.
So is it so that when I see a successful student that I was involved in for 10 years ago, I become a little bit happy? Is it the same for you, Sondre, when you see Sverre?
Definitely, but Sverre was way successful way before we started our data science lab initiative. But I mean, what we see in Norway is that we do have a lot of open data. So kind of the data foundation for starting an AI company is there. But what we lack is often access to talent and also access to kind of the real problems, as well as it's not that easy today to sell an AI product because of the explainability, which we have kind of briefly touched upon.
Very good. I'm really happy to have you in the panel debate later. Can we go back to Brage? I have you maybe checked your microphone, or is it?
Is it any better now?
Much better. Yes.
Yeah. So let's see if we can get the screen shared again. Yeah. Good that you hear me. Thanks for having me. I'm Brage Strand. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Mobai. And we are an NTNU spin-off working on facial recognition, biometrics, with the purpose of doing ID verification and different authentication use cases. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. Firstly, I'm going to start to have a quick note on the Norwegian Biometrics Laboratory, which is at Gjøvik. So here you see the research group, including 4 or 5 of my co-founders, which is part of the ICT security community at NTNU. And what we focus on is solving different identification and authentication issues for the finance industry, which is the focus area so far. And here you see on the left side, they have several use cases where they have this process called KYC, or Know Your Customer, which basically is onboarding of a customer. So there they have to do kind of like a document verification illustrated by the passport in the background, and then identification of that person, basically for different regulatory reasons, such as anti-money laundering. And then you have other use cases. You typically see in the media some fraud cases related to bank ID. So the article in the middle is an article where a bank lost a lawsuit to one of their clients, and the client was took up loans, or the bank ID holder got a lot of loans. That was fraud, basically, because someone stole their bank ID. And then there's today you are basically bank ID and you are the same thing, or before these lawsuits. And now the banks basically have to decide if they want to do added verifications of the user holding that bank ID, knowing that password, and having those tokens to ensure that that person is actually the same as the one that was issued that bank ID. So here we see different use cases where you could use biometrics as an added factor to sanction that transactions or sign processes. And then on the right-hand side, you have a text message from my sister when she was at my grandmother, and basically asking me if I remembered the password to her bank ID. And then they ended up getting locked out of the bank ID. Then they spent 20 minutes in queue talking or waiting for the customer support to unlock their bank ID. And then they were unable to do that because they weren't able to properly identify my grandmother. And these are big frustration for customers in specific use case, and a challenge for banks to provide good services. So I got a video here illustrating our technology. So here you see a process where a user has a smartphone and scans the passport. So here you are reading the front page of the passport to get some information. And now the user is reading the chip from a passport. So basically the user is holding the passport and the phone close together to read out using the NFC reader. And then lastly, the user can take a picture of themselves and then send it to our face recognition engines to do a facial comparison, and the identity is verified. So this is could be a typical onboarding process instead of going physically to a bank location and providing documents and doing manual identity checks. So basically we work with 3 tech areas. That's face comparison or face match. And then facial recognition systems, they also have different attack vectors. So in the middle, you see my co-founder holding up a picture, trying to fool a facial recognition authentication system. And then you also have documents which is more targeted or attacks more targeted towards documents, basically fraud in documents. And we work with technology in all these 3 areas. And we'd use that typically in the video you just saw. So I'm highlighting here an unlock of a phone using an image of the owner. And this is a typical risk of system where you want to use facial authentication. And the way we do that is that we focus on different attacks. So here you see a mask attack, one of our co-founders producing 2 types of masks, one more cheaper mask on the left side, and then a more quality silicone mask on the right-hand side. And then we use different image processing techniques and machine learning techniques to try to identify these kind of attacks. So here you see on the left side, you see the real person. And on the right-hand side, you see the mask, and you see the difference in the texture here. And this could be input to our overall decision-making process on if this is an attack or if it's not, if it's a legit attempt. And then the last example here is more a biometrics attack target towards documents. So here you see 3 people. And the thing is that the person in the middle, that's a morphed image. So that's a person that doesn't exist. And it's a merge between the person on the left-hand side and the person on the right-hand side. And that image have the property that you will get positive facial recognition match to both individuals. So basically, if you get those images into an ID document, such as a passport, then you can have 2 or more persons, for that matter, using that same documents. So you can have a completely legal document with but that the biometrics in that document is manipulated in a way, so you could basically travel under someone else's name. Typically, use case for criminals or terrorists. So we are early. We are a bit over a year. I'm building core technology and building it into prototypes that we're testing with clients. And I think coming back to some of the challenges we face, I think Sondre was targeting a bit. Here you see document written by the banking industry, which is a draft, which basically is trying to set the banking industry requirements on secure digital verification of identity. Basically the process that I showed you in the video. And I think for banking customers in Norway, it's quite hard to understand that way of doing things and comparing it to how we do it today. So it comes up a lot of questions and a lot of fears that you didn't have. And typically you are afraid of new technology, and it's hard to understand what new risks you introduced and how large those risks are compared to the risk you have in the current system. Or you typically you neglect to compare it to the risk you have in the current system. But this is a typical very important work that we work with the banking industry on trying to establish, okay, these are the ground rules that you should look for when you purchase solutions such as ours. So as I think explaining that to multiple people that doesn't necessarily have any prior knowledge of facial recognition is a challenge. And another focus, which already mentioned, is talent. So I think for us, we're looking a lot for eager, younger, perhaps worked a couple of years, that wants to take PhD with us to focus on specific issues where we want to create core technology products related to computer vision. So I think that's an important challenge to finding the right people. So that was short about Mobai. Thanks you.
Great, Brage. And one thing that springs to mind when you present like this is what is the cost of a wrong classification? So we see sometimes I open my phone and it doesn't work, and sometimes we've seen examples of people breaches into that type of recognition systems, and I assume those type of costs have different values. So whether and how do you consider that? Is that? Yeah, I assume that's something that you look much into.
Yeah, and I would say the cost is completely different depending on the use case. So you unlocking or me unlocking your phone once, that might be depends on who you are, on what's the cost for that. But I would say that's like the lower end of the spectrum. But then the use cases where the requirement document is written, that's basically the goal is to issue a bank ID. So in worst case, I might be able to issue a bank ID in the name of Erna Solberg. And then I basically have her digital identity and are able to represent her using all electronic ID on level highs. And that's a bigger consequence. So I think it depends a lot on who you are and what you want to accomplish in that service, basically, on what you get access to.
Yeah, I would. I don't. If I get access to Erna Solberg's bank account, that would make, or maybe even the statsbudsjett, that would be very nice for my personal bank account. But let's not try to do that, and that should be off record for you. But Alex, what do you think about those 3 companies and the startup lab? Does it excite you when you listen to their talk?
Yeah, I just remember like starting up a company, so just straight away it sort of like brings me to Lexolve, but because just remembering the pain of like asking everyone for the legal documents and like what did you do, like what are we going to do? I mean, unfortunately, actually StartUpLab has some like free documents online, which I thought was awesome because I can kind of go to my friend and recommend that to them. But just the fact, because I've logged onto Lexolve just to check it out, and it's really fantastic because it doesn't only kind of benefit like one company, it benefits the whole kind of startup community in Norway, and that's something which I find really amazing, and also kind of what further benefits these type of artificial intelligence based solutions can have, yes, for like one customer, but for society. I think that's something which has really broad potential impact. But also, of course, like this, digital risk, you know, in the last case here, and there is a real risk there of, you know, what could happen if so and so, and you know, it relates to all of us, and you know, how we go by day to day, and like we don't think about a lot of these things, but that's kind of what
that's closely related to privacy rules, for example. So one of the reasons that privacy is so important is for exactly this. So how in your system, Brage, how important is privacy? And Datatilsynet, for example, do you have a working relation with them?
We are hoping to be part of their just launched a new sandbox, which has application now for artificial intelligence and privacy related issues. So we are scoping out an application for that, to be hoping to be part of that, because biometrics by itself, it's by definition sensitive personal information. So this is a super related relevant field for us. And I see also we got some questions from the participant on this, and one interesting thing is that if someone in Norway were to create a facial authentication service, it would be easiest for the banks in Norway, because the banks in Norway, they actually have everyone's passport on file already. So they are storing passports for that is, I don't know what's the English term, but it's forankret in the anti-money laundering process, that they basically have to store identification documents, and those documents could be used for authentication purposes as well, as long as you give consent for that, of course. But this is a super relevant topic, and the general rule of thumb is that you should try to store the information as close to the user as possible, right? So the way it's on the phone, it's then you typically store the biometric data on your phone, and you don't have a central service that have access to all the data. And I think one also important aspect of this is that biometrics, typically in privacy laws, is one big group. But I think you should also focus that there are large differences on how available these data are. So me personally, I would be super skeptical for a DNA, fingerprint, making those kind of data that are not very accessible today, more accessible. And then I'm thinking that the face, voice, things that we interact with, there it's already somewhat available. And there I think the technology that we work on, which is the attack detection, that's basically making it harder to impersonate someone. I think those kind of technology things are super important, because
so Sverre, how important is privacy in your applications? Is it the same? Do you have a working relationship with Datatilsynet? You're muted, Sverre.
Sorry. You are muted is the quote of 2020.
Yeah.
So we don't have a relationship with Datatilsynet yet, but of course confidentiality is like critical to any legal relationship, and it certainly is kind of our whole business is unviable if we can't protect the data of the company.
Right. And would you say that it's important to get help from, for example, StartUpLab or NORA for that type of thing, or is that something that you will like to hold close to your company?
I find it hard to get help on privacy. I think that there is a lot of technology missing in building kind of good privacy solutions, but in our case, we're lucky that the market kind of nobody will buy a service that doesn't have good privacy or integrity protecting and confidentiality protecting services. I think the privacy problem is more consumer facing applications, kind of when you're competing with Facebook and Google that have all your data already.
So Sondre, what would be your role in such a scenario? Is that IPR type of things, these type of things, is that something you could help with?
Well, we do have collaborations with some IPR lawyers and so forth sitting here once a month, where companies can contact and get kind of get answer some question for free, but in most of the time we often refer to other companies or other startups who's managed to solve that question, because they've been more hands-on in the process, and it's so much small details. So referring to others who have been able to solve it, it's what gives the network the strength it needs in terms of solving those kind of issues, I think. One thing is the kind of the professional which you can get, and also the talking to others who has been through that process.
Yeah, I'm just like a follow-up question for you, Sondre, about StartUpLab as well, because I know you're really good at attracting talent and bringing in talent and also like working with talent. So so could you kind of like just give a breakdown of how you do that? Because I think that's really important for a lot of companies in Norway.
Well, first and foremost, I will say kind of it's maybe the companies at StartUpLab who is good at attracting talent. But when you have a pool of those companies, you kind of become a magnet for a talent. On the other hand, we are always collaborating with the University in Oslo, trying to bring our startups into their lectures and so forth. And by that, we do have some initiatives in terms of how to engage students. We have an open platform where people can register their CV if they're interested in working for startups, which we then it's open for all the companies sitting at our place. I think the database is now on around 400 people, which is quite good. But again, it's always up to the companies themselves. So we can't do the work for you, but we're trying to help you as much as we can on the way.
So Walid, what type of problems do you see on the IPR issue? Is that something that you also focus on in your company?
Well, we use open source software for most things, so we don't have that issue. We do have some proprietary data that we're accumulating. I think on a legal aspect, if I could just change the question slightly, we've maybe had some issues with using real estate agent data, so the name of the real estate agents in our predictions. But luckily, if you are familiar with the legalisten.no, yes, that very much set a precedence for how you're allowed to use data. If it's in the interest of the public good, then it's fine. So we're pretty much good in terms of IPR.
And what about talent acquisition? So you explicitly talked about getting talents. How do you go about? Do you go through StartUpLab, or do you go through another way, directly to universities, for example?
Well, we're a relatively new startup, so we don't have growing pains yet to the same extent as the other startups. So that's one benefit of not growing very quickly. But luckily, the founding members have broad networks in the data science communities. So we don't have a lack of data scientists, essentially. We're actually looking more for business-oriented people. So that would be the next couple of hires for us.
So Alex.
Yeah, because I think this is really interesting as well. Like, because I was at Spacemakers like developer meetups, and you know, it's amazing kind of when you show technology to people, because it kind of takes your breath away when you look at the technology being developed. And I think like people coming in, and especially students coming in to see that, it's kind of like you don't think it's possible until you see it. That's what is amazing with technology startups, I think, to some extent. And I know that like Lobotics or Lexology have kind of worked with this as well, because I was part of the legal hackathon last year. Actually, I was like, this is like a small brag, but like I was part of the efficiency team that won that category. And it was like so much fun, because like you're participating, but it is actually, you know, Norwegian startup companies that are behind those kind of like community-led like initiatives that kind of, it doesn't only kind of maybe find talent to some extent, but I think it also kind of brings up talent, right? Because like it's so that this is kind of a question to the startups, in sort of like also how can you bring up this startup community, like especially to Brage, like insecurity. This is like important question, right? Like, so So how do we do that within the security kind of community?
I think forums such as this, as NORA and meetups and these kind of, I like the informal settings where you expand your network. I think that and it has to be a setting where you can have a dialogue, where it's safe to share. So I like to have a learning focus, and then I think it's a lot. For startups, it's important to collaborate. And so I think, and most startups, we have scarce resources, so it's easy to collaborate, right? So to focus on that. If I can, I want to follow up with a question with Walid as well. So I have some, I've had the hypothesis that the real estate agent doesn't make any difference. So I think that's very cool to see that it does make a difference. And then I have my follow-up question is basically what factor or in what environments do you see that the agent is a lower impacting factor, or it's not that difference between the agent? Because my assumption is that there are some scenarios. Say I live in Lillehammer. Does it make sense, or is it any difference? Is it the difference between Lillehammer and Oslo, where you have, if you understand what I'm asking?
Definitely. I'll try to explain it as best as I can. So the main limitation in how we do agent comparisons is the number of sales that an agent is responsible for. So the more homogeneous sales that the agents do, and the more homogeneous home types that we compare across, the more certainty we can say that this particular agent has overperformed compared to baseline. Having said that, there are definitely differences in areas. Some areas are more competitive. Yes, so there are differences. Apartments, there will be huge differences in Oslo, for instance, whereas a place in Lillehammer, we haven't really looked into the specifics of that. But yes, I could say that once we get 30 or more sales, the signal is significant. If that answers your question, I'm not sure, Ravi.
Yeah, and I think for me as an individual, it also is interesting to know that, okay, in this area, it doesn't matter who I'm picking. So there I can go for the cheapest one, right? Yes,
yes. So you can go to meglermatch.no in a month, and then you will see for your particular home whether it matters. It's going to be individually based on the address and based on your particular property. And so when you see the plot, the distribution plot that I showed earlier, you will see the difference between the best and the worst and the expected difference in selling price. And that's what we're trying to convey, that the prediction is unique to a particular home and to a particular area.
Yeah, so I think just want to go off on that, because this is really interesting. Kind of like, what kind of technical challenge are you working on at the moment? And sort of like just bring that question forward to Sverre, like, because I know that you got that 13.7 million kroner now to develop like a new product. So what kind of technical challenge are you currently looking at, and sort of like how could research help in kind of assisting with solving that challenge, or what kind of research community would you work with, like say in Norway?
So there's primarily two problems we're looking at the moment. So one is a kind of how do you model the lawyer from sort of AI perspective, and how do you kind of utilize all the kind of existing pre-trained models, and what you need to do on top. So there I'm looking for kind of AI expertise, and particularly looking for reinforcement learning people, which I don't find that many in Norway. So, but I would find it beneficial to have like let's say a Norwegian shared project to build a BERT model or build our Norwegian GPT model. I think there's stuff that can be done there, and I would happy contribute both kind of people and money if we can get that off the ground. The other problem that is very relevant is the UX, like how does a person interact with a system where AI is like an embedded part of it. I feel like I don't find that many experts in the area, and I happen to know one, but other than that, there's not that many. So I think that's also an area that is very interesting.
Okay, so I was just wondering now. Well, there was a question here from Walid actually. Whether you've considered hiring a generic data scientist and teaching the reinforcement learning?
That would be, I think, step 2. So if our models are very finicky, like you have this balance between like sort of state, your model complexity, your action space, and then your reward. And so how sparse or dense do you do the reward? And if you haven't done that for a bit, you will struggle. You have to kind of get that into your fingers. So I'm looking for people with the experience in round 1. And that's kind of where we are, where we need to be as a startup. You know, in step 2, when we're expanding, then I think we can teach the RL.
Okay, so I think we're kind of closing in on the last few minutes here. What do you think, Morten?
As you probably noticed, I'm at a visiting office and the net suddenly went down. So, but I think it's nice to have this concluding question, and that is a question I would like to ask all of you, and that is on how should NORA.startup be the key role in your future. So if you see 2 or 3 years in advance, NORA.startup is big, important, and how is it important? So maybe Sverre, would you like to think how would ideally NORA.startup help you in your future?
Well, there's like 3 things. One is to kind of help us advance sort of the government framework for startups and in incentives for startups to build AI, and maybe also the investor community. I've been in many meetings with investors. Norwegian investors doesn't ask the right questions when it comes to building an AI product. When I'm talking to investors in the UK or in the US, they're much more targeted and they ask the right questions. So that's one. The other one is I would like collaborative projects around stuff like I mentioned, BERT, but also in the area of privacy. I see that there are some interesting like challenges to NLP and privacy and in Norway that is unique, and I think that would be cool. And other kind of bringing latest research to Norway. That would be my main wishes. No?
Very good. I hope you're taking notes, Alex, because this is important.
Definitely, I'm taking loads of notes on this.
Very good, Walid. Do you have the same feeling, Walid, or do you see a different role of NORA.startup?
Well, those were some excellent points. I had written down influencing the investor community as well as facilitation of collaborative projects. So those points were pretty much summed up.
And what about you, Brage? More on IPR, more on helping to write proposals, maybe? Is that something that NORA could help with?
Yeah, I think so. So both was mentioned. I think for us, we're interested in companies and researchers working with other sensors and other modalities than face to collaborate with, and then also as an extension of that, participating in application writing and as a partner in a potential project. So that's super relevant.
And Sondre, you're key part of NORA, of course, but maybe you have your own opinion on what NORA could help with in a startup lab type of setting.
I think most is mentioned. I mean, access to talent, help regarding research partners and research proposals and so forth, but also bringing kind of the industry closer and being a quality stamp in terms of getting those first pilot projects. I think NORA could be a player in terms of helping de-risk the project in some sense.
Awesome.
De-risking, Alex.
So just because you've talked a lot about collaboration here, and I think we have a lot of researchers listening to this. So how are they going to get into contact with you? If you can just start with Sverre, and then we can just move around to different participants.
Oh, yeah, just email me, sverre@lexolve.com.
How about you, Sondre?
The same, sondre@startuplab.no.
Yeah, and Brage?
It's brage@mobai.bio, B-I-O.
And you, Walid?
Walid@homefair.no.
Okay. And also, you have clearly shared some like challenges there. So I really hope you collaborate as well. Like the thing you were mentioning, Sverre, about the Norwegian language. I'm sure there's a lot of need for that in different solutions too. So I think there's so many benefits to the whole community collaborating together. Just as well, like I just wanted to wish you Merry Christmas and hope you're getting into the Christmas mood. I certainly am, and Morten is, because actually I shouldn't say this like promotional stuff, but like he has a book called AI Myten og Maskinen, and I'm just reading it now, and it's really great. So I'm just throwing out a word to Morten there as well. You probably want to say something to finish up?
So thank you, Alex. It's always nice to have a promotion. I would like to say that for all participants, also the audience listening to that, if you're interested in NORA startup, if you're a startup working on AI, or if you're a researcher that wants to get into the startup field, NORA startup is meant exactly for you. So in addition to sending email to all of those participants, which you of course you can also go to the NORA startup website and you can apply to be a member. That does not only mean listening to these type of talks, but it also means joining in a collaboration where we try to lift each other up.
Nice. I think Merry Christmas, folks. And yeah, so if you could all like unmic yourself and wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.